It's January 20th, and last night was the last night that I lived at my home, the place where I've lived for the last 10 years, here, this land that I'm on right now. Long day of moving today, tiring. I woke up in bed, looking through the skylight in our little wood cabin into the trees in just this spectacular morning. And I'm getting emotional. I was crying this morning and last night and the last few days, just leaving this place that has meant so much to me over the last decade, has meant so much to me. Most people living in modern industrial society don't have the opportunity to live in a place that is somewhat intact habitat. I'm actually up in a tree right now because I love to climb, and it's just a beautiful evening, and I wanted to get up high and just see this land one more time from here. I'm sure I'm going to visit. I'm sure I'm going to come back. But it felt important to come up here and say my goodbyes in some ways to this place. And this is not a pristine place by any means. The bears, I've seen one bear in all the time we've lived here. I've never seen the elk no longer come to this area. They're a mile or two that way. The grizzly bears are gone from this area. The wolves have not come back to this area yet. The salmon are not here. It's not intact. It's not particularly healthy even compared to what it once was a couple hundred years ago. But it is far, far more intact than most places that people have the opportunity to come into deep relationship with these days. Mostly in our culture, our idea of connecting with nature is go out for a hike, go to a park, go to a national park or a state park, visit with nature, not live with nature. And that's what I had the opportunity to do here in some small way for the last decade, was to live in nature, to live in daily relationship, to become part of the land, to develop relationships with the land, deep, intimate relationships, specific relationships with specific trees, specific birds, specific deer, specific frogs, over multiple generations sometimes of these creatures. I'm thinking about the red-shouldered hawk, who has raised a couple generations of kids right over here, nesting just around the corner here and flying almost every day over our heads here. Sometimes we'd put out, bones if we made a soup or something like that, chicken soup. We'd feed our bones out to the forest. Down in the meadow, we'd walk down a ways and throw them out, and then we'd see her an hour or two later coming in, picking at the bones, getting her food. That's a relationship. She learned this was a place that she could come sometimes. And we'd see her down here, right below me, hunting for voles in our compost pile. That's a relationship. Multiple generations of deer. I think about the fawns who, right under this tree that I'm sitting right now, I'm pretty far up right now. I'm probably 80 or even 100 feet up. And these fawns, when they were very young, were left by their mother at the base of this tree during the day as a safe spot for them to be. And during that time, we had a nonviolent direct action training here on this land, and she trusted us. We set up a latrine, a little bathroom, right near the base of this tree. She left her babies right next to that, next to the small path we had to it. And so every day, everyone who went to the bathroom there would walk right by these newborn fawns, tiny little fawns with their spots. And she was utilizing, humans to be safe relative to other predators who might be around. Coyotes, bobcats, cougars. So I've seen those fawns grow up to become adults and have babies of their own, have fawns of their own. We've worked to try and make this land a better place, a better habitat in different ways, whether that's been removing trash, tons and tons of trash that we've hauled out of here, creating habitat, planting native plants in areas that have been degraded. We built a whole pond down here to try and create some more seasonal wetland habitat for the native frogs, and they love it. There are so many tadpoles. One of my favorite memories out here was last summer. I guess it was late spring, coming out here with a friend of ours and her 2 young daughters, and bringing them down to the pond. And they live in the city, just how thrilled they were, how absolutely thrilled they were to see those tadpoles, to teach them how to catch them, cup them in their hands, and to see them, squeal at first with fright, and then realize that, no, it was safe, it was okay, and learn that they must be very gentle with these creatures, and to just see that connection with the next generation. That's a profound loss that most people no longer have that experience growing up in the city. It is a profound loss. And that is something that, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 generations of our ancestors had, growing up with tadpoles and frogs. And now in the last few generations, it's been lost essentially to the vast majority of kids who are growing up in these highly urban environments. And this video is not trying to get all political. I've written before about cities, about overshoot, about suburbs, the unsustainability of suburbs, and urban sprawl, and all these different topics. It's not what this video is about. This video is just about my connection, my love for this place, my profound love for this place, that has raised me. How much have I learned from these trees and these meadows and these animals, watching them and learning patience, learning to be a better person, because these trees are making the world a better place every single day just by being alive. They're creating habitat, they're sequestering carbon, they're feeding animals and insects around them. Even when they die, they will make the world a better place with their bodies. And that is something to look up to. That is something to aspire to. If you want somebody to be a mentor to you, to be a guide to you, look to the trees around you. And that's what I was thinking this morning, looking at these trees outside my cabin, outside the little skylight there. Just how much I have learned from these beings. They're probably about 80 years old, those oak trees back there over my cabin. And that's an elder. To me, that's an elder. A lot to learn from them. A lot to learn from the young ones, too. Stars are starting to come out here. It's getting pretty dark. I should probably get down this tree before it gets too much darker. Otherwise, I won't be able to see. But if there's anything that I want to impart with this video, it's that we need to fall in love with the land. We need to fall in love with the land. And that means being in relationship with the land, not as an purely aesthetic experience, a place that we just visit occasionally, but as places that we are in long-term direct relationship with. And this is the problem that I have with cities. This is one of the many problems I have with cities, is that they make it very, very difficult to have relationships with intact habitat in any sense. There are these little fragments here and there of highly degraded, highly fragmented habitats inside cities. And yes, it's important that people go there. But what can you do to really develop relationship with those places? It's very difficult. They're very human controlled. There is not much of the freedom that is nature, that is wild nature, uncontrolled by the human hand. And, I encourage people to connect with those places, to go to those places, to do whatever they can to restore them, to treat them well, to make them better. But I think that we need to have relationship not just with fragments and scraps, because, no more can you isolate an animal from its habitat and put it in a zoo and think that going there and seeing it is any relationship with a functional natural community. Then you can go visit, a small grove of trees, half of which are probably non-native, in a small local park, and expect that is somehow representative of or closely related to a functioning, naturally evolving ecosystem, a natural community existing in some sort of balance and reciprocity and an ongoing process of complex diversity of life. I've had the opportunity, or the unfortunate reality of living here in a place like this, is also seeing the areas around start to get developed to some extent. I mean, there's a giant barn over here down next to us that the neighbors built that wasn't here a couple years ago. And in its place, there were 6 or 7 really lovely, probably 60 to 80-year-old oak trees, black oaks and white oaks. And it wasn't particularly wild. The previous owners, mowed under them all the time, and there was no underbrush or shrubbery. It was, non-native grasses. It was not a fully intact, functioning ecosystem. But that's what happens. That's the march of industrial civilization, is that progressive degradation. This land 150, 200 years ago was all this lush oak savanna, oak woodland, with a huge diversity of animals and plants and wildlife and fungus and birds coming through, amphibians, frogs, all kinds of creatures, and humans as part of that. And over time, that has been progressively degraded. First the old trees were logged and these lands were plowed. That destroyed so much life here that the roads came in. Then you have more and more development. And when you put concrete down, when you put, a housing pad or something like that on top of the soil, that is the entombing of the land, and that's what we see more and more of, is not just the cutting of the trees, the fragmenting further and further of these habitats from, vast swaths of wilderness to little postage stamps here and there. That's what's happening more and more, is this progressive destruction and entombing of the land. And that's what leads me to do what I do. So I just need to give, turning back to this land, I just want to give appreciation, because I think that when we have direct relationship with land, when we open ourselves to land, we are called to take action. And that's important because, when I went out to Thacker Pass, when I went to, to fight the Utah tar sands, when I went to Unistoten Camp to participate in what was going on up there, when I participated in fighting coal trains and coal export terminals, when I fought against the destruction of pinyon juniper forests, these things were not purely coming from an intellectual, scientific, rational part of my mind. That was part of it, because that is part of us as human beings. We have these brains, we have these minds, this ability to rationalize what is happening around us, to communicate information between us, and that's important. I don't want to denigrate that. But what we so often miss out on in the modern era is our hearts, our emotional connection to these places, to these things that are happening. And that's why I need to give credit to this land over the last decade for inspiring me, for feeding me. I have eaten the acorns from these oak trees, the pollen from these pine trees like the one I'm in right now. I've eaten the mushrooms that grow out of the ground, the mint the strawberries, the tomatoes, the potatoes that come out of this garden area right below me. I've eaten deer from these deer who walk this land. I've eaten squirrels from these squirrels who come up and down these trees and live in this place. This land has fed me. I drink the water from the well, the rain that falls out of this sky through these trees, down into that soil and into the ground. This is what has sustained me and fed me and inspired me, body, mind, and soul, to do this work. And so I want to give thanks and appreciation to this place. I better go down now. It's actually going to get too dark to see. If you've watched this long, thank you. And thank you to all the life here, to the land, to all the creatures, to the soil and the trees, and the sky and the water. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Just as you protect me, I'll keep working to protect you. Just as you make life possible for me, I'll keep working to make life possible for you. That is my blessing. That's the blessing I wish for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.